Welcome to Romance Unzipped, your happily ever after book club. I'm Holly.
And I'm Annie. We read, write, and obsess about all things romance.
Let's dive in.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Holly.
I'm Annie. This is Romance Unzipped podcast. This is Sophie, our unwilling participant.
She
Yay.
usually only lasts about 1 minute.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not cut out to be on camera. And we say, but you are. Woo. You're free. Run free, bird.
This week we read My Dark Romeo
By LJ Shen and Parker S. Huntington. It is within the last 5 years. I'd say it was 2023.
That sounds right.
Seems fair.
I was interested in this one because it had two authors.
Yeah, and Holly and I are co-writing a romance novel. So we thought, oh, we should look at other people who are doing this. Although they are both in their own right quite successful.
Sure.
So it's an
aspirational read.
It's an aspirational read. So it's a contemporary romance. I think it bills itself as dark romance, but it's like
I didn't feel that way reading it.
It's very playful and fun, but then there's heavy content for sure. So
yes.
Read your content warnings. Like,
especially at the end. It
kind
of gets a little intense.
It gets super intense. And it starts with a non-consensual marriage. Not the sex part, but the marriage part. And
yeah, the sex is always very consensual, but the marriage is almost kind of kidnappy.
Yeah, it's very kidnapping.
She's manipulated socially. I suppose she does have a choice, but not really.
So on the book, they call it a marriage of forced inconvenience.
Okay, forced inconvenience. I have a lot of forced inconvenience in my life. Yeah. I get that.
So yeah, marriage of forced inconvenience, and it almost is like I felt more blackmail-ish because he just leverages everything against her to force her into this marriage. So it's not inconvenient on his part. It is decidedly he's
manipulative.
It's super manipulative.
Although because she's such a piece of work, he is inconvenienced greatly by her antics.
He is greatly inconvenienced.
Keeps regretting and wondering why he engineered all of this, because now he's stuck with
firecracker.
Yes, a real sassy troublemaker.
Yes. So the setting starts in Georgia at this small town, probably fictional, where everyone's a billionaire and all the daughters are kept virginal until they are bartered for wealth.
It almost
matches.
Felt like a fairy tale. It was kind of
Yeah.
hard in the first scene to understand if I was reading something literal or almost like an allegory. It was so over the top.
It was over the top.
They were at a debutante, is that how you say it? Debutante ball, and all these eligible, super rich, generationally wealthy young women were looking for billionaire husbands.
As one does.
Sure, we've all been there. So that was the start of the book, Chapel Falls, Georgia.
Yes, and then most of the book takes place in Washington, D.C.
Yes, so he's in this huge house. I mean, house isn't even the right word. It's like a mansion, an estate. You know those houses where when you drive up, there's a sign out front and it's got a name. The house itself has a name, like Windswept or something. That was his street. And do you remember what the street was called that he lived on?
Dark Prince Road.
Dark Prince Road.
And P.S. This is a trilogy. And P.S. his two best friends also live on Dark Prince Road. You can see where this is going.
Yes.
They are all Dark Princes.
There's a lot of billionaires on his street and then in her hometown.
Yeah, so this is also a billionaire romance. It is dual point of view, first person.
You know what I thought was kind of interesting? The whole book was in past tense, except for the epilogue was in present tense.
Wow, I didn't catch that. Nice one.
Yeah, and it was jarring when I got to it. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I saw it was the epilogue, and I realized at that point it was a stylistic choice. But I don't think I've come across that.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly like it, but it's there.
I didn't notice it. Holly, what is the spice level?
I would call this one a 3 out of 5.
It is, yeah, there's more friction emotionally than sexually.
It's a slow burn for sure.
It is very slow.
It's a real slow burn. So because of that, there's just not that many sex scenes.
Yeah, and also because of his hang-ups, his issues. And Parker S. Huntington is kind of known for slow burn too. LJ Shen, on the other hand, not. She writes, but sometimes actually quite a few, but she writes a lot of very hot combustion. And this was more medium combustion. So
they were instantly attracted to each other.
Yes, but they hated each other.
But they hated each other, right. So for them to finally get over that, it was one of the latest transitions from enemies to lovers that I've read, at least recently.
Yeah. They
were probably 75% of the way through the book before they admitted to themselves and started having behavior that was more like, I love this person.
Not like actually abusive.
Right.
So, okay, we'll do our tropes, but also it's a romance. There's a happily ever after. So even though they're mean, they do fall in love. And of course, they're falling in love the whole time.
Yes.
Denial. But also, right, we said check your trigger warnings if you want. And we definitely give spoilers. So they start immediately. Be emotionally prepared.
Yeah, I think if you're watching somebody review a book, you should
so what are they going to talk about for 30 minutes? Is it a slow burn? We just slow burn the review.
Nice.
So what are the tropes? We have obviously enemies to much later lovers.
Yes. He's a billionaire.
We've been on a billionaire streak. We might have to
I think
shift
there's just
gears.
A lot of them. But yes, we are trying to dabble in different genres and they still sneak in.
No trope left unturned. That's our tertiary motto.
He is definitely a total asshole. Oh yeah, he's out for revenge.
Yeah, that's the driving force of his behavior.
His life
is revenge. So
he's got like a multi-revenge thing going on. He wants to. The reason he even found Dallas in the first place and engineered this whole wedding is just so he could stick it to her now ex-fiance.
Yeah.
So it's purely revenge on his part.
He's a jerk. Like legitimately.
Romeo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
is a real jerk. So another trope is she's a feisty heroine for lack of a better descriptor, but she is like undercover, real clever, but plays ditzy and lets people see her this way, but she is definitely working things in the background to her pleasure, I would say.
I liked it when he would figure out, oh, wait a second.
She's not
she
a
just
dum-dum.
Worked me. She's my intellectual equal.
Yeah.
I just fell into her trap. That happened a couple of times, and that was kind of fun.
It's like literary fiction being like, wait, romance is actually quite smart. So we had that. What else do we have?
There's an age gap. It's not too big. I think it's 10 years. But certainly the young virgin.
Oh, yeah. Untouched, virginal bride child. Just kidding. She's 21. She's not 21. A bride child. But yeah, at like 0. She's had kisses. Not for lack of. I guess she hasn't been really interested. She's just been kind of bored.
Interested intellectually, but because of the environment she grew up in, it's just simply not allowed. They're super religious, and all of her friends and her familial expectations. There's no messing around till marriage. They're supposed to find another generational wealthy family, marry into it, and then have sex then. So that's the same as her sister, who's a couple years younger and is a main side character in the book. Right. She has the same attitude where she's very interested about sex as a concept, but wouldn't dare do that.
Yeah, there's the familial love and kind of obedience almost to this concept. And they're at the party in the intro when they first lay eyes on this pack of billionaires. And one of the best friends says, oh, I'd let him do heinous things to me. I don't know what those are, but I would definitely let him do them. Like, oh, another trope is corporate espionage. I don't know if that's a trope, but the whole plot line kind of revolves around vying for power over his dad's company, but also her ex-fiance / his rival company. So there's a lot of corporate throat slitting going on. And so what do they look like?
Well, she's petite.
Yes.
She's got hazel
Her
eyes.
name's Dallas.
Dallas Townsend.
Mm-hmm. She's 21. She has olive skin, long dark hair.
Mm-hmm. And she's, as far as we can tell, the most beautiful woman anyone's ever seen.
Yes, is quite
he's smitten.
taken.
Everyone is.
Everyone is just bonkers for her beauty and curves. She's tiny but curvy and has a love of food.
She eats in every scene, and not a lot of it's junk food and desserts, that might be a little bit of a suspension of reality. The amount of junk food she consumes,
and she's stunning. At one point, Romeo refers to her mom as the former Miss USA.
Right.
So then we have some context for her genetics, but yeah, she's a beautiful olive-skinned young woman, long dark hair, and kind of like careless with her beauty. It sounds like she knows that she's beautiful, but she doesn't weaponize it necessarily, and she doesn't really care about being liked much.
No, half the hijinks that she does, while they do embarrass Romeo or inconvenience him in some way, they often
make her look
bad as well, and she doesn't care, because that's another way to be a poor reflection on him, and so she knows it gets under his skin.
Yeah,
but does not.
From the beginning, like at this, when we meet both the characters at this debutante ball, she's just eating her way through the snack table. I mean, it's not a snack table; it's a beautiful lavish buffet. But all the two friends that she's with are talking about their purse and who's going to be there, and she's like, how do I get some of that shortbread?
Yeah, I'm only here because I heard the catering.
Yeah, she just doesn't care about it, really. So she is cute and quirky, but interesting.
She has a reputation among her small town that she has no ambition and is lazy and just kind of does nothing. And that's certainly the impression that Romeo has of her at first.
And that she gives to people.
Right.
She does it, I think she perpetuates it.
Yeah, I think that's on purpose. So, for instance, she's failed out of college a couple times, and at one point he's trying to do something nice to her, and he says, oh, I paid for you to have admission into these, whatever college you want. And she's mad at him. She's saying, no, I was going to Emory, and I was failing my classes when I met you. That was so much fun. I want to go back to that. And he realizes she was failing her classes on purpose, so she could just keep staying in college. And she didn't have any goal to reach a milestone. Yeah.
I mean, also the privilege of being the daughter of a ultra wealthy person.
So then there's Romeo.
Okay, so our first glance at him is him walking in. You just picture the like slow-mo movie scene, and it's him and his two other Dark Prince Road inhabitants. And she calls one of them, oh no wait, I'm sorry, there's only two of them. The third one has not entered the scene yet. One is Silk, because he's just such like a beautiful pretty boy. And Romeo is
Leather.
And he's got inky hair and white olive skin,
angular
golden
face.
I feel like it's a requisite to have high cheekbones.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe this, but he's got a really nice body.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And one of his hobbies just so happens to be working out.
What?
Eating well. Yeah, he's got an amazing body.
It's just...
Yeah, what are the chances?
And he's tall. Who
Right,
knew?
he's tall. What other attribute? Oh, and he's got gray eyes.
He has gray eyes. So Holly and I talk about this all the time, because there's like... She was like, I think gray eyes are really rare. And then we were noticing the heterochromia.
That's in several books. I've seen one of the characters having heterochromia, which is where your two eyes are different colors, like a husky.
Or there'll be like maybe a section of one eye, which is quite unique. But in romance novels is all very
They're punching above its weight class.
Yeah, punching above its weight class. So I had to look it up, because I was like, okay, what are the odds? Literally, what are the odds that so many, especially gray eyes, I think are like the bad boy eye color, because they can be cold. And she calls his frosty. But approximately 1% of the population in the United States has gray eyes. So it's greater in the world. I think in the world it's 3%, but this book is set in the United States, so we'll use that. 1%. So he's very special. She has hazel eyes. as do I. 18% in the United States, FYI.
I'm over here with the brown.
Brown, I think, was 48% in
Sounds
the US.
about right.
It's like 70+% in the world. So we're here also with your eye color data.
Yeah, we have all kinds of facts.
So, okay, so we did our quick and dirty. That's the scoop. It does end on like a pretty brutal trauma note that is out of left field.
Yeah, so this book doesn't feel like a dark romance because it's so absurd in the way they continue
and their banter is so funny.
Their banter's really good.
The banter, the dialogue, the two authors do so well. It's like clever and funny. It feels bubbly. It's like a sunny park day reading it. You're like,
even though
funny.
It's mean. Yeah, it's not. It's mean, but lighthearted at the same time. I think because it's clearly not. They don't take themselves seriously. They kind of. You can tell the way they are falling in love with each other is enjoying the competition and the.
Well, and it's like they both push each other out of their. Like he's forcing her not to be this version of herself, which is this kind of like persona, right? Of like. I'm not smart, I don't care about anything. And so he's like pushing her to action where her whole thing is like, I don't do anything. And she's pushing him out of his like cold box.
His rigid, just discipline.
I feel no feelings, everything's the same. So they're both just like driving each other. But to that point, like he is very mean to her. And so a lot of it is, she gets meaner throughout, but a lot of it is just her reaction. But it didn't feel upsetting, and like I can't even watch the Real Housewives series because they're mean and it makes me uncomfortable, you know? So I don't like things where people are mean to each other.
They did a good job in this book where he was a terrible person, but not in such a way that like I knew I was going to be able to rally and be on his side at the end. You know, you can't have a character do unforgivable things or be unredeemable, or it's no fun to root for him at the end.
Or else it's just a psychological horror romance.
Right, that's no fun.
Stockholm Syndrome.
So he was, even at the start, I could tell he was redeemable.
And we knew, like, he, like, obsessively chews this gum. Like, you just see that there's this wounded person trying so hard to control things so that he feels okay, and then enter Dallas, and she's the ultimate uncontrollable. She's a hurricane of like mouth running off, food going in.
She makes messes. She stays up until the middle of the night and sleeps in until 3 in the afternoon. She just doesn't follow any rules.
Yeah, she doesn't care. She's quite endearing, but she would be very frustrating.
Be hard to live with.
Be hard to live with.
Her.
Yeah, and he wants to bone her so bad, and he does not bone.
Yeah, so it's been 5 years since he's had sex, like penetrative sex.
Yeah.
And he has said, I do not want children. I'm so anti-children, I won't even have sex because a condom isn't good enough. Sex. Right. Like an opportunity to lead to pregnancy.
And he gives this, he said 99.9% of vasectomies work, but there's that 0.01%, so it's not worth it. I'm like, you know what, Romeo? If you were this committed, you would get it because it would be that much more.
I agree. That part just seemed
a little self-serving.
A little suspect. So that's his, and he reveals later why he has this. It's basically because his childhood was so traumatic, he doesn't want to bring children into the world. That's what it stems.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, he took a lot of hits.
Literally. And then also his ex-fiance, we find out in bits and pieces throughout the book that he did used to have a heart and he had a relationship and he was kind of a normal guy. He wasn't so cold and stony and asshole-ish. But he got his heart broken by Morgan, his ex-fiance.
Who
cheated on him with his dad.
Oh, and he walked in on it. Oh, and the dad didn't stop.
Yeah, the dad just made eye contact with him and kept at it. It was clear, at least from Romeo's telling, and obviously he's a biased narrator in this regard, but that the dad did it on purpose. It wasn't just that he was so overcome with attraction. He was trying to drive a wedge into their relationship because he didn't think that Morgan was of high enough social standing. Yeah,
he's like the mom who makes the daughter be the cheerleader, but then like stabs the daughter and sneaks in and impersonates her as a cheerleader. That should be a Lifetime movie.
Yeah, that would be good. You're onto something.
I'm onto something. So he doesn't like his son. And he cheated on his wife for the entirety of the marriage. So Romeo saw this horrible model of love. And then he thinks that he has love only to lose it so easily to his dad.
So he just shuts off entirely emotionally, but even physically, he refuses to have sex, like penetrative sex. But now you have...
Does he get blowjobs?
Yeah, he gives and gets
oral. Does he have anal sex?
Yes, there was none in this book, but that's...
Yeah, I think that's his go-to.
I think so.
But he doesn't even like really talk about it that much with her, which kind of surprised me. But.
So they're like just super hot for each other. And there are a fair amount of scenes where...
There's like hot stuff that's happening.
Yeah, he's touching her or going down on her.
They're having sex with their clothes on, like actual...
So it was a little confusing to me. So he says even condoms aren't good enough. She keeps begging him for sex over and over.
Fun.
So he like takes to this idea. He comes up with this brilliant loophole.
Just screw her through my clothes.
And he just like leaves. They leave their underwear on, and he talks about how he's like, "Oh, I took her virginity." And does that work?
I don't. It sounds like terrible friction. Like for him, for her, like what kind of material?
Too much of a barrier, unless you got really loose underwear. And isn't a condom just like the same thing but better fitting, and without such a porous material?
It's very.
It was an odd way to get around. It seems like you would have just put a condom on. But so they have a lot of,
and so you wouldn't less chance of getting pregnant.
Sure,
like a fabric is permeable.
I agree. It's,
you know,
I think there's a reason why
Romeo was operating from a place of desire and insanity.
And I think part of it, he so many times both characters had internal thoughts saying, I can't back down. I can't show my weakness. Like, oh, I realize now that this was the plan and she fooled me, but I can't.
Right.
Like submit to this. So I think part of it was him having this mental block of, well, I told her I'm not going to have sex with her, so
I'll just screw her with my panties on.
Yeah, I'm just going to, this way it doesn't count and I still won.
You know what? You guys, it counts. Don't try this at home.
Yeah,
unless you want a baby, maybe.
I'm unfamiliar with the physics, but it seems far-fetched.
And like two-piece sets of cloth sliding against each other.
Uh-huh. So the sex scenes didn't really do it for me. They did have one scene with just like regular sex without clothes on, or maybe there were two.
The car scene, that was hot.
Yeah, and that was I like that. That was hot.
Yeah.
But all the kind of dancing around, it was just a little bit. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Wasn't your cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was hot but incredulous.
Okay.
And I appreciated their push-pull friction, and I usually need I need the book to put out a little bit more, a little bit quicker, and it kept me engaged because their banter and their dialogue is really good. Like some of their lines, they would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, you know, my wife, she's doing something totally over the top," or my bride slumped in her seat like an overcooked shrimp. You know, it's just like these kind of quips, and they just keep coming, and they're funny.
This was a laugh out loud.
Yeah.
And most of it was the banter between Romeo and Dallas, but then also I really appreciated the relationship between Romeo and his two best friends.
Yeah, Oliver and Zach.
Those also, two friends,
both attractive, both tall, and both billionaires.
Yeah, it's quite the trio. These two friends were really good side characters, and so often the male lead doesn't have strong side characters, so I was happy to see that. But they were in a fair amount of scenes, and then they also showed up in almost every chapter in text messages.
That's true. They were in a lot of scenes.
Because they all lived on the same road.
But you're right. This was really character rich because there is a lot of scenes with a lot of people, and you see their personality and they interact. So it's not just this kind of prop or a mirror for the two to go about their day.
It wasn't just in service to them. They were their own character.
Yeah, and there's this whole kind of world that happens, and it is a good point that like the boys show up so often throughout the book, like they are in the book. They're not just a device.
Mm-hmm. And one area where they did show up a lot, and I think it worked, was through text messages.
Yeah.
And I often get a little squirrely when I'm reading text messages in books. I know that's a part of modern life.
What?
So I know that is like my own hangups, but I kind of don't want to involve that kind of realism in my books usually. It just takes me out of it. I think it's because when I started reading and formed an opinion about what it means to read a book, it was before texts and emails, and that's just, for me, like my default of what I expect to read. And so then when I read about emailing or social media or texting, it's just kind of is off-putting a little bit. It pulls me out of the immersion, I guess, is what happens. So that isn't as fun. But in this book, it worked, and I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because they were so funny, and so much of their relationship was based on their text messages. But these three best friends, they clearly had affection for each other, like in a friendship way. But they were just brutally mean to each other.
They're so mean to each other.
So insulting. I mean, just always bagging on each other, bringing up each other's like worst fears.
Weaknesses.
Oliver was just constantly telling Romeo that, I want to get with your wife. Like, I'm going to bang her if you ever get divorced. And all of them were very mean with each other. So the quips and the banter, I think it was most fun between Romeo and Dallas, but it was also really good between the three friends.
Yeah, I wonder, I was just thinking this because all three of them are these very dominant personality types. So I was like, oh, I wonder if it's just this kind of like stags butting heads. I don't know, maybe they're all just jerks, which they are. I've read all three books, but they turn out to be lovable. They all find love. And I just finished the last one. I can't remember the name of it, but it has Oliver in it, who is the biggest hound dog. And there's a surprise twist, so read that one.
Oh, okay. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And then her friends, she's got her sister,
Frankie,
who showed up a fair bit, and they did have a charming relationship. I always love the sister relationships. Maybe because I didn't have a sister. It's like, oh, have fun.
You're my sister now.
Thank you. But she didn't
She
make
kind of was
enough,
so
enough
isolated.
Scenes. Right. But then Dallas's main friend was Romeo's cook.
Yeah, Hetty.
And I liked that because all these books, these billionaire type books, there's often the old kind of wise old man butler who offers not very
Albert from Batman.
Exactly, like infrequent but very wise advice, and will always say something like, "Oh, I know he seems mean, but just give him a chance." So there was that character, but then Vernon, the chef, the cook in this book was a little different. She was young and
feisty,
beautiful, like just the same type of character that you might see as a main character in another book. Mm-hmm. And they had a fun relationship with each other because they also gave each other shit. But Hetty was, she was cool. Yeah, she was cool, and she was looking out for both of them. You know, she worked for Romeo, and obviously, even though he's kind of a weirdo and a mean guy, she liked him. But she's also friends with Dallas, so I like that she was able to like play both sides.
When we first meet the group chat, because we haven't met Zach yet, and we meet him first in the group chat. Also what I like when I'm reading their texts is the font is changed and it's bolded, and so it's really, and it is formatted in the center of the page, so it's really clear that we're switching over to a text thread. And when we read Great Big Beautiful Life in our last episode, when Emily Henry wrote in the text conversations, there was no change, and there wasn't any.
It used the same dialogue tags as speaking.
It was very confusing. I was like, what's happening? Is the person here? I don't know. So I like it when it's formatted, so I kind of know, like, brain shift, this is happening. But so this huge drama happens. He creates this scandal in this small town at this debutante ball. Next thing we see, they're you know, the deal is done, and it starts with this text thread, and one of them says, "How's it feel to pop your scandal cherry?" Yes, that's what it is, scandal cherry. And then the next one goes, "Welcome to the club, son. We've got snacks and the Kennedys." You know, they're just like, they're snarky but funny. Mm-hmm. And actually, from the party, the younger sister's always making out with people. So she kind of like towing the line of what she can do. And Dallas finds her, and she says she smells like cheap cologne and weed. And she goes, so I started looking around for who made her smell like a oopsie baby in the back of a drug dealer's car. Well, so it's snarky.
I think that might be why it was so easy to root for them, even though they were so mean to each other, because they were like that with equal. Everyone.
Yeah. If it was me, it'd be this like Godzilla kicking a baby deer. I'm like, oh, that hurts my feeling. I'm sensitive, you know. But they're just like, oh yeah, they have their quips coming,
and they can dish it out and take it as well.
They exactly. Like Dallas is not a shrinking violet. Mm-mm. She is ready for the sass.
One thing about this book, and I think it might have even been marketed this way, I'm not sure, but it had a Beauty and the Beast retelling.
I didn't even think of that until you said it.
So she's obviously beautiful.
And he is beastly.
He's beastly in his attitude, not his looks, but he's got this big, huge house, and he whisks her away, and she's held against her will. She's very isolated, and the biggest Beauty and the Beast imagery is this rose that Vernon, the wise old friendly butler, gives her, and he talks about how he's a hobbyist horticulturist, maybe?
I think he's the gardener, and
he's the gardener?
created this subspecies of rose that
can last for 6 months.
As long as it has love. He doesn't really say that. It's
I didn't quite understand the botany aspect of it, but she's got a rose, and it's in her room.
One rose, and it's cut. It's just in water.
Right, and yet it can still live. And as the book goes, a petal or two keeps falling. And he said at one point, yeah, this can last long enough that a person can fall in love. It can last for 6 months. So as time is elapsing in the book, she's watching the flower, and it's getting more and more wilted.
And then they have a bonding period, and the flower perks up.
Yep, it does. And then at the end, spoiler alert, Romeo gets poisoned, and he almost died, and he's laying in her arms dying, and she's crying, and she's never been able to cry her whole life, and she finally cries, and like right then the last petal falls, which is it's so much like Beauty and the Beast, where she thinks the beast is dead and he's dying, and then she falls in love, and then the petal falls, and then he transforms into the prince. Yeah. So there was no transformation per se, although internally he certainly went through a big change.
And there's no magic, there's no fantasy, but there was this.
It's just what is the word for that?
Like a
homage, retelling? I don't know.
Yeah, it was. I forgot that part with the crying, because throughout the book she does not cry, notably, and at one point she uses the fact that she doesn't cry against him to like guilt him into having sex with her without a condom.
Right.
You're going raw. Side note, totally related, unrelated. I was with my wife's friends and work friends, and they were talking about their kids. They had just flown from Canada. And
I can't wait to hear how this is related.
It is, and it's so crazy. So it was like a however long flight, and he goes, yeah, my son said that he raw dogged the flight, and I like almost threw my bubble water across the room. I was like, wait, your son raw dogged? What does this mean? Your son raw dogged the flight? He goes, oh, all the kids say that. And I was like, I don't think they do, sir. And he goes, no, it means when they don't use devices and they just look at the back of the seat in the airplane. I'm like,
that's not what that means. There's a perpetrator of a really funny prank at that social circle if they all think.
I was like, are the youth saying this? Also, I don't think so. I think the dad's getting effed with, but also terrible misuse of that phrase. Mm-hmm. Anyways, he does raw dog her.
He does.
And it's not an airplane ride with no devices.
Ooh, yeah, she's very emotionally manipulative.
Who thought that was a good fit? You know what we should call not using a device? Raw dogging. Sorry, I'll get back to the topic at hand.
No, there's a lot to think about.
It's such a
My kids are getting to the age where they're starting to tell me words that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
They haven't come up with that one yet, but it is a learning experience.
I hope they co-opt something super weird and you're like, oh, I can't see what it really means. So she keeps one of the huge plot lines is her trying to tempt him into having vaginal sex with her and impregnating her, because that's all she wants is to be a mother. Like, we were speaking to her laziness, but her goal in life is to be a mom, and it's almost like she kind of keeps it quiet. So she's proud of it and she believes in it, but she doesn't ever explain it to anybody.
I think he described it as she's saving up all her energy so that once she has babies, she can chase them around. So she is kind of listless and seemingly doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But he can just tell that she's going to be an amazing mother, and she's just waiting for that chance.
Yeah. She is very, she's like a cute puppy that's smart. It's like she's an Australian Shepherd.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
you got to give her space to run.
And she's bored and confined, but doesn't have like a focus, so she's destructive.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Holly, tell me about villains.
There were a couple of villains in this book. Both of the dads.
Okay, wait, I just had an epiphany moment.
Yeah.
It was small, but you were talking about Beauty and the Beast, and throughout he likens her to a Disney animal, a Disney character, specifically a Disney animal because her eyes are so big and her lashes are so curly. Mild epiphany over. Back to you, Holly.
There's more than one villain in the story. Both of the dads were just despicable in their own way.
Yeah.
Her dad just ditched her, shipped her off to a objectively terrible human being.
Yeah, he's like, sorry, you're just gonna have to go, babe.
Yeah, otherwise it's gonna look really bad on me.
I like to be rich, and I like people like me more than I care about you.
Created a scandal. So at this debutante ball at the beginning, Romeo manipulates her and lures her into the rose garden with shortbread and champagne. He says, "Come on, I'll give you this dessert that you've been eyeballing. And by the way, while we're at it, like, how about I make out with you and finger you, and you've never felt this before, and trust me, I'll be very discreet, and this will be 10 minutes, and then I'll leave." And she acquiesces.
Yeah.
But he arranges it so they appear on stage, and all the people are there, and there's cameras and lights. And so now there's this huge scandal, and she's tainted.
But I loved this scene, and they're great writers. It's fun to read their writing. So all of this is very over the top and dramatic, but it's fun to read. You're just kind of along for this fabulous ride. The fake wall of the stage comes down, and they're on this podium in front of the whole town, and everyone's kind of like calling these terrible things. Like her sister's like, "Dad's gonna ground you till you're 40," and people are just kind of like talking shit, and one person's like, "And her fashion's so terrible," and in her head Dallas goes, "Well, now they've gone a line too far." Like, she doesn't care, but she's like, "Rude.
How dare you?"
Yeah. So it is.
So her dad just said, "Oh, no, this is a scandal, and I don't want to be embarrassed, so you have to marry him."
Yeah, you have to marry Romeo Costa.
And then Romeo's dad, it comes out in bits and pieces throughout the book, was a real piece of work.
He's a villain.
A real shithead. And that he neglected and abandoned him when he was a child, and then as an adult, he coerced and seduced Romeo's fiance.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think she was coerced. I think she was seduced.
Yes, and he promised her a lot of money. He used his wealth for manipulation. Maybe coercion isn't the right word, but it was intentional to get her to break and
totally
break up their.
And unlike one of our previous episodes, which was Failure to Match, where she's offered $200 million, but she won't take it because
she wants to stick with her entry-level job.
So we know people can resist.
Sure,
money.
Yeah. So the two dads were just one-dimensional, I felt. They were so bad, they didn't have any redeeming qualities. That's usually not very compelling for me.
Yeah.
Because I just want them to go down. I don't have any reason to.
You don't want them to go down on their.
Not on their son's fiance, which is exactly what he did.
You're right, they are one-dimensional. And her ex-fiance, Madison, was very one-dimensional. He was just like he was like a villain from a soap opera,
yes.
kind of, where he just plays the type. He is going for these very obvious corporate espionage moves. He gets punched in the face. He keeps showing up. And
then he ends up poisoning and attempted murdering Romeo.
Right.
Which was an escalation, because everything else was kind of goofy. I mean, it was corporate espionage and there was a lot of money involved. It's not so much that it was like G-rated or anything, but it just felt absurd.
It did feel absurd, and then it ratcheted
and then
up.
It turned into murder, attempted murder, and that was a bit of a shock.
And when Romeo was young, he was starting to get in the dad's way of the dad's affairs, so the dad ships him off to Italy, and
to his sister.
To his sister, so Romeo's aunt, who's quite neglectful, and gets him into the clutches of her then boyfriend, who puts Romeo in child fighting.
Yeah, he locks him in a cage, and he's only allowed to eat if he wins like a death match. Maybe they didn't fight to the death, but
it was
he's talking about breaking bones, and
he had like really bad
scars on his body, and
so it took a very from him having this like control need to chew gum to then you're like, oh my God, this is really crazy.
I was not expecting. I mean, obviously they were hinting that he had some kind of trauma.
We weren't expecting that.
I didn't expect it to be I was locked in a cage and I had to. What did he say?
I had to fight to eat.
Yeah, he was jealous of the orphans because they got to fight every day so they could eat every day. And since he technically had someone watching him, he was only there on the weekends. And then the boyfriend left, so then he was back to being in the care solely of his dad's sister, and she didn't feed him, and he would just chew gum. That was his meal.
So yeah, it was like 0 to hyper speed next galaxy. But now you know it's coming, so you can prepare.
Yeah, that was the dark part, was hearing about his backstory.
I think though, like if you step back apart from it, his treatment of her was really mean. Like he emotionally isolated her and was like shut her off from the world. So it's like the fun of the banter, but that part was mean. So
and he even shut her off from himself, because as he would...
That's what I mean. He just like iced her out.
Because he physically isolated her from everyone else because he brought her to this new town and stuck her in his mansion. But then as his own hang-ups of, I can't be falling in love with her and why am I feeling this way?
I can't not want to bone her.
He would just say, well, you know what I have to do is totally ignore her and not come home for 5 nights. So then she was getting... He was arranged it so he was her only link to the world, and then he was icing her out.
Yeah, so
that was pretty mean.
It was very mean. So if that's a tender spot for you, it probably would not be a funny book. Just a heads up. But it is funny, but that part's significant. I was like, oh, usually like when there's the dark-hearted villain, he's still very involved because he's busy grooming.
Yes.
And this was just the...
So this book had the quintessential, she gets really sick.
Oh, yeah.
She's got this bad fever. She's in bed.
She can't get up. She is weak.
And it's towards the end of the book. And at this point, he's already realized that he's falling in love with her or in love with her. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. I love this part. This is the scene where he nurtures her back to health.
Carries her.
Nurses her. And she's like feverish. And she thinks, oh, did he just do this gentle thing for me? Oh, must not be. That's not what happened. He just ditched her.
He overheard her saying to her sister that she hated him. Was that near the beginning or the end?
That was right at the start of her getting sick.
So I think that was part of it,
so
too.
We heard that.
He's super butthurt. And he's like, oh my God, she's been playing me this whole time. What am I doing? And so he had to stay away. So there's a little bit of like...
It has a reason. And that's why, too, I think his backstory was so intense. Because it would require that kind of trauma.
Right, for someone to have such an obscene reaction.
Forgive such as what felt like kind of an unforgivable reaction.
So they fall in love. Guess what? They have a baby.
They have a baby.
Guess where it is? In the epilogue.
Yeah, that's the epilogue.
And the epilogue is called the baby making scene. Or no, the baby showing scene? The baby bump scene.
She got pregnant in the epilogue. She found out she was pregnant. We don't actually see the baby.
Okay. I mean more like we see the baby
general?
enters the scene.
Yes.
The concept of the baby.
Uh-huh.
And that was her driver the whole book. So the two, LJ Shen and Parker S. Huntington, are both really fun writers. They're, I think, both fabulous, like such kind of strong voices in the romance author community. They both have tons of books, and it's easy to see why. They're very fun to read. This was kind of this like mishmash, over the top, not satire, but like tongue-in-cheek of a dark romance. With like the broody bad billionaire who really has a reason but heart of gold, and then the feisty heroine princess who breaks down his barriers against all odds. They write well together, I think. Like it didn't...
I couldn't tell that there were two authors.
My guess would be that they write it together. Holly and I are writing a book, and we're writing it together. Like it's a creation as it goes, and I've talked to some people who like they trade chapters back and forth, and that seems like it'd be really hard because how do you keep a tone flowing unless they're two different characters?
Yeah, I wonder though if you had dual point of view and you both
if they're two different characters
wrote a different character, because it's sometimes in books when you have a dual point of view but both characters sound exactly the same and the tone is the same.
Yeah,
that's not very compelling. So that's one way to get around that. That would be interesting.
I think that's true if it was two different characters, but then if there's kind of an overarching story that you're writing together.
Yeah, you still need an overarching tone, even if the point of view differs. Just for instance, is it a tongue-in-cheek dark romance, or is it...
Right, one is like angst weep, and the next one's like,
laughing at her.
She slipped on a banana peel.
That might not work.
So, yeah, that was... I enjoyed reading it, and it would be fun to look up how do they write together. But yeah, I had a good time reading it. It's fun. It is an escapist read.
Yes.
And as are all the books. I read the second one, which I also liked, but I liked the third one more than the middle one. But also I think that was just trope related because I have my own tropes that appeal to me more than others.
I quite literally read this one at the beach.
Oh.
So that's if you're looking for that vibe.
Nailed it.
I know. Good for me.
Summertime.
I'm just gloating right now.
I was at the beach. What do we read next?
We are reading Hot Blooded by Heather Gare.
Ooh, it's a vampire book. We haven't read one yet.
And best part about this book is when you were looking up the books and the tropes mentioned said age gap.
Oh my God, I laughed so hard. I'm like, he's a vampire.
It's a couple hundred years, isn't it?
That does not count, you guys. I mean, you count it however you want, but that was pretty funny. Significant age gap. I'm like, because he's a vampire.
Yeah.
He's undead.
Right. That's.
Oh, I wanted to add in my 4 cents about book reviews. I just read this recently, and I love authors because they write books for us to read, and we're so grateful. And someone gave it 3 stars, and they said, this is the highest praise. For me, this is a 5-star because if you know me, you know that the highest ranking I'll give a novella is 3 stars. And I was like, why? Why even rate it? Like, if you loved it,
just take your bias.
It just doesn't make any...
Why bother rating it? Yeah, or if you don't like novellas that much, just don't read a novella.
Yeah, or if you like your fingers can't go past the 3 to the 5 because of your novella bias
system,
just don't review that one. Jane writes these books for our enjoyment, and we can read them for free on subscription. And so that just made me sad because I was like, I respect if you have a system, but maybe just keep those in your journal instead of publishing them.
That's a good lesson. Not every thought that you have needs to make it out into the world.
Yeah. So, and also, thank you people who write books. We're so grateful. And also people who write reviews because I love reading reviews. And yeah, Hot Blooded for a cold-blooded man. His name's Amos. And yeah, age gap, significant, 100 years. And it's spicy but unexpected. So join us.
Join us next week.
We have a new episode every Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happily ever after.